Welcome to Zentangle Project Pack number 23. This is day 9. My name is Rick,
And I'm Molly.
and we are so excited to take the next step here, and Molly's going to lead us on that step.
Yeah, and we just like to say when we're working on these multi-lesson series that we encourage you to go back and watch our introductory video if this is the first lesson you're tuning into. And we are using all the materials from our Project Pack 23 materials bundle. And if you don't have those materials, we encourage you to use whatever you do have in your space at this time. Encourage you all to take a moment here for gratitude before we get started.
And just appreciate everything that you've done so far and listen to, what you've created. And it's almost like having a conversation, because what Molly's going to do next is fill in some of those empty spaces.
Yeah, we've really put a lot into our compositions this far, but there's probably some white space left on yours. Maybe you have more white space, maybe you have less. And whatever space is left for you, we're going to begin, and I'm going to begin with a little bit of poke root here, just to start that process off of like getting the space filled in, shall we say, but in a way that's adding to our composition. So I'm working with poke root here, but I encourage you all, if you have worked with poke root before, I'm working fairly big. So the berries of this poke root is, I would say, close to like a quarter size.
Well, you can see compared to her hand, how big it is. And I really like the comparison of the organicness of the poke root against some of the more structural tangles that are there.
Right. And the purpose of drawing it bigger is, again, another way of contrasting, because you're adding like some open space, but you're also like filling with a pattern. So even right next to it, we see those like inner auras we did with the muka, and it's really dense and textured. And then the poke root offers something that's a little more open.
You can see also what I really like what you're doing, Molly, is you're filling in those interstices as you go along. And, sometimes, people will, or me, will do them at the end, but this really gives a nice sense of what the look is as you're doing it.
So I've kind of stopped that one section and went to another section to start to build the poke root in another place. This is something we've been doing throughout this series, is sort of like taking a tangle and putting it in more than one location to build composition. So we're kind of, building the whole thing slowly and layering and getting the patterns to go over and under and create depth and all kinds of really interesting things. And I think that the poke root is a good one in this place to kind of like fill these spaces without like taking over, or maybe it is taking over a little bit.
Well, and it's like any plant. You can see like the stems can be as long as you need them or short. You can really, really play with this. And even though we're saying that we're filling in the spaces, we're not going to fill in all of the spaces, and you can or not, but just, understand what you want to do with this.
And, have a little fun with playing with how the poke root might bump up to another tangle in some instances and then fall behind it in other instances. So by kind of taking turns where you put it down, you can play with the layering and the perspective and which direction it's going, and it creates some interest, I think.
And of course, all of this is done in a hollowball fashion. Everything is drawn behind.
So take your time with this. This is sort of like we're getting closer to the end. We're like really taking note of where our composition has gone. We're not, trying to go quickly. I think it's important to sort of get to know your work and maybe take minutes or seconds or whatever it is you need to step away from your piece and look at it maybe arm's length away or take a couple steps away from it and then revisit it to see where you're at. Because sometimes when you're so close to it, Rick, you start to not be able to see the bigger picture.
And check out what Molly's doing here. Instead of doing that solid black ink color, she's doing this texture. And it's very, very nice, particularly on the larger sections.
A little bit like the Tangle Mist, sort of this, like, and I'm probably doing it a little bit more straight lined, but it's kind of nice when you add a little wiggle to it. And it kind of fades, it creates sort of a different light, shall we say, in the behind. So it was like that real inked in area and then fading into this more like almost like light coming through.
And of course, if you need another poke root,
you always need another one.
Your pen has a large amount of poke roots in them.
Right.
And I did the editing on this, and I could see Molly's pausing to like study where she wanted to put the next piece and really communicating with what she was creating. And this I love because it resonates with that in thatching that you can see to the left of the screen on the fife.
Right. Or even how the Tangle Mist kind of like fades out like that, as if there was almost like rain coming down, slowly spitting. So again, we're looking at the white space left over. What do we have? And now I'm kind of trying to think about like maybe I could revisit some of the other tangles we already have here on the composition that maybe would balance things out a little bit. So earlier Julie actually did this series with printemps, and I'm thinking like I want to add a little bit more of that. Like I think that would sort of be a nice addition here. So if you remember correctly, when she did the printemps, she did this fun thing where she did it first with the 05 and then went back in with the 01. So you got sort of a multi-tiered effect of the printemps looking like it was maybe closer or further apart.
And then she also had done the Kiko. And so this is a really nice one to put in. And I like the resonance of the width of the gap in the Kiko and in the those lines that Molly did. So there's this really nice resonance of style going on.
And when you layer tangles like that you put in like earlier, you can kind of play around with how they fall with other tangles. So we had obviously done this between star, so I wouldn't have known where to put that Kiko if we had done that earlier. But now that the between star's there, it's like we can be like, okay, let's put a little of this behind there, and it works really well with that.
So you can see like this whole presentation is the idea to give inspiration for you. And again, not to copy it, but to take inspiration, and you'll find, oh, this would look good over there, and this would look good over here, and just trust your instinct on these.
So we're up at the other end of the composition here, now trying to look at what space is left there, and I didn't have a ton of space left there, but I did have a little bit, and I was like, what do I want to put in there? So I did a little poke root, and then decided to put a little more bunzo in there. Now this is a very aggressive way of shading, so I don't recommend that everybody will love this, but I do think the effects are amazing. So I'm choosing to do a very dramatic pushback with the poke root. I kind of felt like I wanted it to be in the way, way, way back of this composition. So I'm putting a lot of graphite down here. This is a very aggressive move, but I was feeling confident it was the right one for where I was at in the composition. But if this look feels like too much for you, then, try something a little different. That's fine. But, it's just paper. So there's a lot of chances we can take. This is where you take risks, Rick.
Well, I love looking at this because it's bringing forward the other parts, the other main parts, and it was really competing with it before.
Right.
And now watch, this is such a magic thing because that sort of rough texture, now it just becomes this beautiful, smooth, just pushing the graphite into the paper. And look at how it like really lifts up that was frondus, right?
Yeah, I actually love how that came out. I was really happy with that.
Oh, I love that you did this. Look at that. It really is like those, who's that artist that does the wallpaper that Mom loves so much?
Oh, William Morris.
William Morris.
Yep.
He does that technique a lot. Like you'll see in the really dark colored areas, these elaborate patterns.
Mm-hmm. I think it's almost like romantic or dramatic or something. You're like doing something that's unexpected.
Great effect.
And it's a little scary at first, I would say. Like if you've spent all this time on a piece and you're like, oh my God, what is she doing?
And there's no erasers, so
Yeah.
there's that. And look at how that lifts that up, right?
Oh, the puppy hugs comes right to the front. Yeah. Really fun. And you still see the poke root. It's just a really different approach to shading. So.
And you're not doing all of the poke root here. And you can also see that the graphite that's built up on the tortillon can be pulled off, and you can still use that.
Mm-hmm. So almost when I start to use that sort of textured background, I ease up on the dramatic shading of it. I'm going to do a little bit less, and it sort of isn't quite as dark as up above. So it's like I'm not coloring in per se, but rather doing these variations of dramatic shading.
And again, that just lifts that up, and the difference of adding the tortillon.
So on your piece, you're going to want to look at what tangles you want to kind of float to the top and which ones you want to be in that middle ground, and then the ones that you want to push back. The frondus, the puppy hugs, and the betweed, which are ones we did earlier. Oh, those are all the ones Martha did. Maybe she was trying to be like, I want to be in front.
Right. Well, look at that.
So pretty. But look at, then again, putting the dark behind it, which pops the frondus forward.
And those are two basically drama tangles, and that really lifted the frondus. Nice.
And any of these shading techniques you can easily go back to, so there isn't, like, this isn't the end. If you want to go a little more, modest and then revisit it later, you can easily do that.
So we're shifting over, and now I am going to add a little bit of accent or texture around that center frame. But first, I'm just really appreciating what Molly and everybody else has done. So I'm going to put it in those 4 sections. And I'm going to start out with, or in this part, we're going to use the 01 and the 05. And of course, our pencil and our tortillons and our white chalk. And I'm going to start playing with the gold pen that you have. It's the Pen Touch. And I really encourage you to read the little writing on the back, because I'm going to give a little show and tell of how this pen works, and get a, one other thing is, as I'm working on this, I had just a plain sheet of paper, because I don't want my hand to pick up all of the shading that Molly put down.
All that extra graphite.
Okay, so here we go. We've got this beautiful, beautiful pen, and it says, before use, shake well with cap. With nib up, press the nib and release the internal pressure, and do not overpump. Cap lightly and store horizontally afterwards. So I do the shake, and then I take the cap off.
It is really important to shake with the cap on.
Yes, and I take the cap off. It's a little tight. And now I say, oh, wow, this is the first time I've used it. Let's try it and see what happens. And I go, blop. Yep. Well, okay, so there's a little demonstration. It doesn't take much. So I get it to where it's just very light, or it's just marking the way I want. And I'm planning to put like little orbs. So I'm practicing on this sheet of paper just so I know.
And just so you know, your pen may not have ink in it yet when you first open it. It actually might be a white nib that the ink needs to, I think this one was open perhaps before he opened it, and you would have to pump it to get the ink to come out of the pen. So definitely do that on another piece of paper and really get comfortable with the pen before you're doing what Rick's doing right now.
So I'm picking one of these sections, and I'm just going to sort of reminiscent of just putting those stars like Molly does when she does Munchin, and just a few up there, not many, randomly sprinkled.
Gold just feels so special.
I love that. And I was thinking, oh, well, I'll fill in a certain amount. I'm going to be doing tipple. Yes, please cap your pen. I'm going to do tipple, but instead of coloring in the tipple later, I love the reflection. Oh, let it dry. I had to let this dry maybe a good 5 or 10 minutes before I went in.
That's good to know.
And so now I am just encircling those lovely, lovely dots.
So carefully, too. You're very thoughtful about this process, I would say.
Well, I also didn't want to put the gold in afterwards because I didn't have as much control over that big pen as I do with the 05, which I'm using here. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to put a border right up against the string. I'm going to let the string show because it's like part of the, part of the framework or the matting almost.
It's a nice window, yeah.
The molding, yeah. Okay, so I've got my territory fenced out here. And now imagine that you've got a bag of tipples, and I'm just reaching in, and I'm not really sure what size I'm going to get. Someone might be a little smaller, some might be a little bigger, and I'm just going to put them in wherever they fit, but I'm doing it so they're all like nudged up against another one.
We used to play this game when we were kids. I can't remember the name of it, where there was all these pegs like that fit in a tension box, and you had to carefully pull one out, and then they would like readjust, and then somebody else would pull another one out and it would readjust, and you had to keep carefully doing it until it didn't readjust and it all fell through. But this is very cool looking, Rick.
So I'm just having a really good time putting in small ones, putting in large ones, and really not at all paying attention to what the overall texture might be. And when I get to a place like that, I just look carefully in my little bag of tipples and put one in there that fits perfectly. And you'll see I'm sort of overlapping the strokes, so there's a thickness of a pen all the time.
I told this to Rick many times when we were doing this project, that for some reason this tipple was my favorite. I feel like this kind of brought the whole thing together and was like a really nice addition. I enjoyed this, what it came out like a lot. I think it was like, I'm like, that's exactly what this needed.
And it's one of the most like subdued tangles. It's just orbs.
Right.
But you'll see throughout the rest of the tile, like even to the right there, that aura of orbs around the crescent moon, it really resonates throughout. So here I got an 01, and I'm going back through it, and as slow and tedious as this might seem, it was a really just easygoing, relaxing time. And it's, you can choose to do this or not, but I really like the effect here. So imagine you've put down this tiling and now we're grouting it.
Right. So pretty.
So we're going to do this one all the way through. Isn't that cool?
Looks great.
But wait until you see with adding a little bit of graphite here. And again, holding the pencil at a really low angle, because then you can use the whole side of it. And I'm being really heavy on the straight side, because my idea here is I'm putting a little bit more graphite on the straight side than I am on this curved side. So there's a little bit of dynamic even within that shading. So now I'll come with the tortillon and just, I'm inviting the graphite into the fibers of the paper and then pulling it out just slightly. So like with all shading, we don't want to cover the whole thing unless you do, like Molly did that beautiful with the poke root. But so here I'm going back over it because by pulling it away, I reduced the contrast of it. So this sort of restores a little bit of the contrast.
Gorgeous.
All right, so you can see how the difference of that is.
I get so excited with every like tangle we add, how the piece, the whole thing changes so much, you know?
Mm. And then just for the extra little bit of touch there, we'll add a little bit of a highlight with the white chalk.
A little careful when you go over the gold, I would say.
Yeah.
Not to, because it's got that metallic bit to it, so you kind of just be a little careful there.
And it's exactly what I learned there. So I went over that large one, and it's like, nah, it doesn't enhance it anymore. So afterwards, I avoided the gold. So there's one point on this one where there's like that puppy hugs poking through there. And we're just going to do the tipple in a hollow bar fashion, going under that. Just filling in whatever fits or doesn't fit, you can make it fit.
Just responding to all of those strokes you've already previously put down, right?
Right. And just squishing them right in there. And again, I'm using the 05 for doing the tangling, and I'm using the 01 because of its precision to do the fill.
I do enjoy using the 05 on a bigger piece. You just you cover faster or more appropriately for the size of the composition.
So this is sort of an interesting comparison to show you. Just turn that around here. And the one on the right is fully done. The one on the top has gotten the grout. And the one on the left is without grout or shading. And then around this puppy hugs here, I'm just going to shade even deeper than the puppy hugs. So I want to we're really working with a bunch of layers here. It's pretty exciting. So there's like 3 neat layers happening there. Just add a touch there. So you can really have a lot of shading like what Molly did on the poke root, and you can have different types of shading and reinforce it. And so here I'm avoiding going over the gold because that's already just, it catches the light so beautifully.
Very pretty.
And there we have it.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite. I loved it. It was a great, and the gold bit just really adds a lot to it. That was fun, Rick.
That was awesome, and we really are looking forward. Check out the reflections. Isn't that neat?
I know. Take your time with these. Enjoy the process. Invest in your own practice and have fun.
We will see you in the next video. Bye now.